What can you do now to make living a legacy-worthy life a priority? I'd like to welcome Sherrie Rose to the Design Your Legacy podcast this lovely Friday morning. Welcome, Sherrie.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here. And that is a great question. Most people don't actually think of their life as, am I living a legacy worthy life? Am I living up to the standards, the values, and the guidelines that I've created to live a legacy worthy life? And part of it is really understanding the things that make your life legacy worthy. What are the things that you're doing that are relevant, that make a difference, that matter to your life and other people's lives? What are the things that you do that are part of your reputation? Your reputation is actually your legacy. It's not just your reputation in one part of your life, but in all aspects of your life. And then, of course, what are you doing now that become the stories and the chuckles that you're having over a birthday or a Thanksgiving or remember when? What are these remembrances that you're creating? Because it's all the little things that we tie together, and those things become our legacy worthy life. And the most important part of all of it is the people in your life. Who do you know? Who do you interact with? Who do you aspire to be like? Who do you influence? And who are you the role model for? And if you look at your life in that way, you're living a legacy.
Yes, yes. And we're going to get into some of the wonderful articles you have published recently, but I thought we might go back in time for a moment. So would you share with the listeners a little bit about your background?
Well, my background is actually in high tech. I've been involved in tech for years. And how did I get into legacy? Well, it came through the coaching industry, which I've been involved with the last 15 years. But I would say the real trigger, if I thought about it, would be my brother-in-law, whose mother died when he was very young, and his father remarried, and they became the actual Brady Bunch family. But for him, it was really important to look at history and look at all the pieces because his mother was missing. And then, of course, during the pandemic, sadly, I had a number of friends who passed away. And in fact, I dedicated one book that I wrote, the second book, to one of these people who was a marketer. And it made me realize that so many things, not just what I call the basics, the paperwork side of legacy, people didn't have that handled. And then all the rest of the things that are really part of living a legacy worthy life. People were not thinking about it. So if you don't think about it, if you're unaware, how can you actually step into that role?
Yes,
So
yes.
that's really how it got started. And I'll share anything else you want to know.
Sure, sure. So I think you come originally from the Toronto, Canadian area, and now you're in California, just as a reference.
Actually, not Toronto, even
Okay,
further east. Further
okay.
east than that, I was born in Halifax, Nova Scotia, and I came to the US because one of my dreams as I think like a 12-year-old, I was watching the Olympics with my family, and I thought, I want to be involved in the Olympics, not as an athlete. I was never going to be a great athlete for the Olympics, but I wanted to help run it because I thought that the principles of the Olympics, higher, stronger, faster. It's like, oh, I just love this, and I ended up coming to the U.S., helping with the Olympics, and that brought me to California, and I'm still here. And as you know, our original date that we were going to record this podcast, I was in jury duty, so became an American doing my duty, and but happily living here in San Diego. It's a beautiful place to be.
Yes. So I want to go back for a moment to the preamble conversation that we had. I think it was in last November. And you brought up this point that a lot of the times when people think about legacy, one of the problems is that they just immediately go to this idea of death, or they immediately go to this idea of um, the charity just wants their money. And I thought we might
Right.
focus in for a moment regarding how most people see legacy today. Because, for example, with financial planners or life insurance, there's like the pink elephant in the room of the death conversation, and nobody wants to have that. And so, how do we pivot from there? Would you share your thoughts? Because I thought they were very
Yes.
emotionally
Yes.
intelligent.
Well, first off, And because I've been involved in tech for a long time, and the dot-com boom when it happened, um, the website legacy.com is actually, well, I shouldn't say the website, but the domain is 30 years old. 30 years old. And the person originally had it ended up selling it 26 years ago to somebody who turned it into a directory of death. It's just an obituary website. So that's why if you type in legacy, you will go to legacy.com and it's all about obituaries. So no wonder people associate legacy with death because of that website. We are influenced by how things show up in the online environment. And that problem is this fabulous word legacy, which should not be, a list of like a directory of death. I mean, it's wonderful that we can look people up and get that information. But the legacy is not a few paragraphs of somebody's life with a few numbers, their birthday number, the death day number,
The
the
dash
number
in
of
between.
the number of children they had. I mean, it's like a little summary, and that is not legacy. That's an obituary. So that's where the problem really starts. And also, when people think about legacy and they think about experts in the field, as you mentioned, financial planners, estate lawyers, you're doing stuff with the end result is you're dead, and then so you're doing this because you're going to die. Well, life is transient, it's temporary. We are all going to pass away at some point in time, but that's not the focus. The focus is what you're doing today and tomorrow and the next day, and understanding to live a legacy worthy life. It's not about putting your affairs in order because you're going to die. It's about living your life now, error correcting in the places that you can have more longevity. If you're looking at it in terms of lifespan, if you're looking in terms of money, of course, financial advisor will help you in those areas. But also, if you're going to leave your mark, it's not like you sit down in 5 minutes, write a memoir. What are the things you want to gather? A lot of these things take ages to put together. And I'll share with you that my family, my sisters and I were putting together a plaque for my dad for a big birthday. And it's like one plaque, 16 by 18 inches, some iconography on there and some words. And I would say there's probably 50 words or less on this whole thing, but it took us 6 months to go back and forth, and I like this and I like that. And so crafting something that is important and has value does not take 5 minutes. And even with AI will never do the justice to create the value that you want to share in words. And maybe you will be able to do it in video and holograms, but we'll see how that's going to happen.
Yes, yes. So in your article about the legacy worthy life, cultivating a legacy of relevance, reputation, and remembrance, you write, and I thought this was so great, entrusting my happiness and life's direction to these unknown critics strikes me as rather naive. So I thought it was brilliant that you thought to yourself, why am I going to have other people define me, even if that might be a part of it? Whereas if I could take personal agency of it today and think through it and own it. And so would you speak a little bit into how does one cultivate it? And I know you've touched upon it in the beginning, but I'm just asking you to circle back. How does one cultivate
Right.
a legacy
Well,
worthy life?
part of it is really, what do you stand for? What are your values? What are your guiding principles? What are the things that make you tick? Are you, and really, would you be a role model for yourself? Not a role model for someone, like looking at your life, would I be a role model for myself? Do I have what it takes? And then with that, where are the areas that you want to improve in your life? You take a stand and you grow into it. You constantly are um, raising the ceiling in your own life so that you can stand, because the longest relationship we have is with ourselves. So we have to invest in ourselves. And and that's part of the relationship riches. And when you're relevant, when you say, like, what am I doing in my own life that you are proud, You don't need anybody else to be proud for you. You feel good for yourself. The standard is you're measuring it up against yourself. Reputation is how other people perceive you. And there's always going to be naysayers in your life. People who think you're fabulous, some people who think you're less fabulous. And the important thing is that you say whatever is being said back to you, as long as you feel like I am in integrity with myself, then it doesn't matter. I'm not going to, put my life into those people's hands. I honestly don't know how the people that are the celebrities and the movie stars, how they deal with it, because there's so much stuff out there. But I think if you have a good, um, if you've made stand for yourself, if you have good principles and values, and that's what you stick by. And then at the end, whether it's a story that somebody is telling, that something that happened last week, I met them at a conference and they tell a funny story, or they're telling that same story, at your 100th birthday party, or possibly at your eulogy, that you're part of it. You've experienced it, and you're living into the life that you're creating for yourself, and you feel that it's legacy worthy.
Yes, yes. Thank you. Thank you for speaking into that. I know one of your other articles, and I'd love to have you back on again, talked about this idea of fame, whether somebody has fame, if they don't have fame, and then what they can do with it, and also just that whole ripple effect. But that's another conversation for another day. So another thing that you write that I thought was so great in this article is life's grandeur, I've come to understand, lies in its transience. And I thought, isn't that so interesting? Because oftentimes, the more successful somebody becomes, they can think that they're going to be here forever. And a part of that could be the dynamics around that death conversation. Like nobody wants to have it, nobody wants to plan for it. And I think really this conversation is about how do you live better? It's not how do you plan to die better. It's really how do you plan to live better? And so I thought this recognition and the awareness around transience is just so wise because especially after what people have gone through in the last few years, I think that they have this awareness that, the ground can fall out from beneath them. Everything that they thought was secure might not be as secure as they presumed and assumed. So why does thinking about our legacy now matter? And would you speak more into this idea of transience?
Well, yes, it's a very interesting topic, and life is temporal. It's temporary. You never know what tomorrow is going to bring, and most of us live like we're going to live forever.
Yeah.
And 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 even if you feel that way, which is fine, you still have to look at what do I need to do. And some people kind of wake up when they hit late 40s, 50s, maybe 60 and go, I should get some paperwork together. And they're looking at it, as I said, from the paperwork side of life, as opposed to the pleasure side of life, the productivity side of life. And if you look at, what am I doing? Not like just in work. I know a lot of entrepreneurs and they're very work focused, but am I investing in my relationship? I think Warren Buffett had made a comment a number of years ago at his age with many people passing away. And of course, Charlie Munger passed away just a few months ago and they were pals. He says, your relationships, the close people in your life, they're the most important. And the people who have used the comment about, on your deathbed, you never say, I wish I'd worked more hours in the office. Who are the people in your life? I think there was a study, it's been going on for more than 80 years at Harvard, a longevity study. And I think that there may be maybe 10 people left out of like almost 300 that are still alive in their mid 90s. And it happened to be men because at that point in time it was men that were in Harvard. And the major factor in their longevity, which they said both affected their health as well as their mental well-being, was their relationships. Typically their spouse, but their children, their relationships were the key. So if somebody like Warren Buffett, with all of his money, is focusing on relationships, then that's a really important piece of living a legacy-worthy life and making sure that you are kind and treat people well.
Sure. So I think what you're saying is thinking about her legacy now, and the example of Warren Buffett, who can have everything, and yet he looks to relationship riches, as you would say.
Exactly. Well, my motto is the real currency is relationship riches, because we live in a world where everything is measured,
Oh,
measured in the number of dollars you have, the number of houses you have, the number of cars you have, the number of whatever. I mean, the number of shoes you have in your closet. And you're measuring on the external as opposed to the real value of life, which is our personal relationship. Now, of course, all of the beautiful, wonderful, luxurious things that we have in life, we should all enjoy them. We should experience them. But they are just, um, they're like the warm jacket that you put on, but they're not who you are. They're just external.
yes, 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 absolutely. You say that our legacy is a natural byproduct of living a legacy worthy life right now, a consequence of the life I lead now, but not the sole objective. Would you say more? And is this the first step?
Well, if your objective is only thinking about your legacy as a thing, as a goal, then it's not a value in your life. So when you think of your values, who you are as a person, are you trustworthy? Or do you have integrity? Do you treat other people well? Those There's no number on those. Like and maybe somebody is doing an exercise. Okay, let me see if I can be kind to 10 people today. But that we don't measure our life that way. We don't look at what's important. And so stepping into your legacy is really looking at, what am I doing today that makes a difference in my life and other people's lives? That's where it's relevant. Is what I'm doing in my business? Am I helping my customers? And what am I doing with my family? I love surprises. I love to do things where people are unaware that something's going to happen because it puts a smile on their face. That makes a difference in somebody's life. Um, and with your legacy, your reputation and how you show up uh, as a leader, as a business person, as the head of the household, all of these things are other people's interpretation of you, but it's your actions that are the key. And if you're taking the time to, let's say, participate in a community as a volunteer, I'm actually a volunteer here in San Diego for the TEDx talk. And everybody's a volunteer, and we're all putting our energy in. And we have our own little group, our own little dynamic, and each person can help one another do their thing, or they see something and they say, "Oh, this will help you do your thing." I'm doing a lot of the tech stuff. That comes easy to me, and I enjoy it. But to see when we have our little get-togethers, we get together for dinners, and not just specifically work, but so that we can be humans together. I mean, at the end of the day, that's the important thing. And this, the idea of legacy and living the legacy worthy life is something you do every day. It's not like, okay, I sat down, I got together with my attorney, I did this paperwork, check that box. There's no boxes to check because it's an ongoing flow of living a legacy worthy life.
Yes, yes. Your article brings up it is about, you're right, it is about what people think after I die and the money I leave behind. How can this be legacy? And I thought that was very spot on because I think there is this idea in the public consciousness right now that it is, what will people think, and that money piece. And I think you brought up this point about measuring. Are we just going to measure what's on the external without developing what's on the internal landscape? Wonderful. So,
But, well, measuring, yeah, it's a big deal. That the song from Rent, how does it go? Seasons of Love. 5,000, 2,500, 600 minutes. How do you measure a year and a life? I'm not really a singer, but everybody knows that song, and they go through and then it's all about the time. And in that song, it's like you measure it in love. But how do you measure a life? What are you measuring? What are you looking at? And And people have sliced and diced that up in so many different ways, but it's really, how are you showing up? What are your values? How did you impact other people? What did you do in your community? And some of it seems so simple, but yet, are you actually doing that in your life? And did you go back and look at the archives and pull out the important pictures and put things together in such a way that you're actually crafting your legacy, a legacy that matters to the people that are important in your life, both on a personal level and on a business level? How many businesses are going along and they have no historian? So in the last, I'd say 5 years, you've got some major companies that have hit their 100 mark or 125, Paramount and Disney and Warner Brothers. And all of a sudden they realize we should have a historian prepare stuff. Of course, there's all kinds of articles, but, putting together, even Coca-Cola, these are the companies that are now looking at, we have a history, we have a heritage, and we want to share that, not just our product. And that's how we have to look at our lives. Like, I am the product of my life. I am the product of living a legacy worthy life. That's what show's up.
Yeah. Well, I think somebody has to have that character to be able to step back and get some distance and then invest in themselves. Like you said, we are one of the best investments that we can put our money into. So that is more powerful than Coca-Cola. I mean, Coca-Cola and some of those brand names are amazing. And yet, if somebody can be that pioneer within their family, whether they come from a multi-generational family of wealth or they are self-made today, to be able to look at their life and the good choices that they've made when it comes to people and relationships and those good decisions of, whether the good decisions are turning lemons into lemonade or the good decisions were just based on their values, that is that story that they can bring forward, whether it's being a role model or just knowing that that is the intrinsic value. It's more than their financial plan. It's more than their will and power of attorney, estate planning documents, and so forth. So in this article,
Exactly.
which I will include in the show notes, you also speak into the choices made in the face of adversity. So I wondered what have been some of the best choices of your life, or in the alternative, choices of role models that inspired you in seeing what could be possible.
Yes. Well, I think one of the best choices when I decided I was going to come to work for the Olympics. And I had to go through multiple hurdles. I won't get into them here because I did not have the proper paperwork. And of course, immigration is a very big deal. And here I am, this nice little Canadian girl wanting to show up here. But I knew it was the right decision. I felt it was one of those things where it was a dream. And in fact, I used this word that I created called Anhavim, Enhavim, which is
Unhavim, it rhymes with dream. Go ahead.
right, exactly, from dream to Anhavim, exactly. And it's like when you have a dream, that's one thing that you have to visualize it, and you have to have some uh, reasons why you're doing it, and you have to look at, how am I going to do it? Who's going to help me? So Anavim is purpose and mission led by vision. And so what brought me to California, I mean, I had this vision that I was going to be part of the team. And my purpose was this is something that was going to really make a difference in my life as well as others. And the tagline at that time was, making history. I thought, oh, I want to be part of making history. And of course was part of a big team. And as far as people who have influenced me or inspired me, there are so many. There are countless number of people, um, and I think that when you see characters in another person and go, I see how this person is showing up. How can I be more like that in my life? And this is part of living a legacy worthy life where you're improving yourself, whether you're doing it specifically with maybe you have a life coach, maybe you are in a book club, and in the book club everybody's trying to help each other. It doesn't really matter. What matters is that you take action and work on making your life better so that you feel that it's legacy worthy. I have children. I want them to look at what I'm doing, and they tell me, say, "Wow, we're really proud of you. You wrote another book, Mom. That's great." And I think it's important that you're a reflection of yourself, and so that the people around you can really get a sense of who you are and how you show up in the world. Like as I said earlier, that you take a stand and you are who you say you are. Your actions and your words are congruent.
Yeah, and I just want to bring up something to piggyback off of what you're saying without giving away your next article about on Havim. And in there, you spoke about this idea that it's living a legacy worthy life is not age dependent. And you brought up a number of examples of young people today that are doing some amazing things. I don't have it right in front of me, but I don't know if you can think of one of the names off from, top of mind in your head, but um, I thought that that is also a really good point that, the choice is made in the face of adversity. Somebody might not have decades of life experiences, and yet they can create something, whether it's an invention or bringing awareness to something within a community to help um, young girls or yeah, I thought
A
that was a
lot of
very
it
good point.
is they're taking a stand. And part of the reason that they became uh, famous, if you will, is because they are young. They're young and they're standing up for something they believe in. Whether it's, helping other girls, helping people get education, the environment, whatever it is that they're stepping up and they're doing it, and they feel very strongly they're committed to this thing and for. And it is going to be part of their legacy, whether they continue to do it or not, because of the impact that it has made. And there's a ripple effect. And I think with a legacy worthy life, there is a ripple effect, whether it's just within your family or your community, or if you're a leader, how it's affecting a particular industry or a part of the world. It, I think it was Margaret Mead that said that, and I found out later she actually never said that, but it will still give her the attribution, that things happen. Small group of people are where things happen. When you come together, when two or more are gathered, we can make change. And it's the wisdom to see if it cannot be changed, and the courage to make the change if it's possible, and discernment, knowing, like, are these the right actions to take now, and who can I get involved to help with this particular new idea, project, stand. And when young people do something, and step up, and of course they're using social media and TikTok and all these other avenues that they can get the word out. And if it's important, people will pay attention. And I think it's I tip my hat to them for standing up.
Yes, yes. Well, again, it's a brilliant point that to live a legacy worthy life is age independent. So anyone who is listening right now, especially on YouTube, a number of the viewers will be under age 25. And so this can plant a seed for them to think about, what it is that they can do today and in their perspective around legacy. So you write that integrity, kindness, and a genuine commitment to making a positive difference are the elements of a legacy worthy life. And I was curious, what would you say are your top 3 or 4 values in what forms your legacy plan or vision? Is it the same or slightly different?
Well, I think on a personal level, I'm a very straightforward person. People know me not to mince words. I'm diplomatic, but I'm straightforward. I'm open-minded, willing to receive a lot of ideas. If I have a specific track that I'm on, I want to hear things. But if you don't give me enough that actually makes any difference, I won't be derailed. But I am open-minded to hear things. And I'm very loyal. I'm somebody who, if I'm your friend, I'm your friend. I'm still in touch with my friends from uh, elementary school, still in touch with all my ex-boyfriends, so because these people helped make me who I am. They helped develop and, shape me into the woman I am today. So I think that's very important. And when it comes to legacy, well, my 3 talking points are very simple, and that's kind of the direction that I follow. So it's live smart, where this is legacy is longevity, it's your lifespan and who you are. Uh, Give smart. This is all your money and your finances and your assets, and it's about not just conserving, making more. but also where are you contributing? These are your choices. And of course, live smart, you can contribute your time. Give smart, you can contribute your money, your resources. And then the last one is leave your mark. This is you, who you are as a person, as well as you in your community and with your constituents, with your the culture that you're developing, whether it's family, whether it's business, whether it's community, and what are the pieces that you're putting together. It could be a book, it could be a memoir, it could be pictures, it could be video. There's representative ways of showing up how you are, but it's not just that. It's really spreading your wisdom, and it can be, the talks you're giving, the podcast series that you put together. I mean, this is part of your legacy. People will be listening to this, what you've created for years, and get value of it because it's timeless. This is not the latest technical trick, which I could, talk hours about all the cool stuff that's happening. But that's not timeless. All of those are just tools. They're not part of a legacy worthy life. They're just tools to get you, like your car. The car that you drove 20 years ago is not the same car that you drove today. It's just a vehicle to get you somewhere. But who you are as a core, live smart, give smart, leave your mark. Those are the key aspects of legacy, at least from my point of view.
I think that's well said. Thank you. And there is a timelessness about legacy. And I think there needs to be some things that are timeless these days. It just doesn't have to be the latest tech gadget, the latest electric car, the latest. There's such a push to keep up in this, I think they call it the attention economy. And yet there also needs to be a balance with what you're referring to of what's timeless. So let me go back to this idea of relationship riches for a moment. You write that relationship riches are the currency of your worthy legacy, in the nickels of our relationships, in the choices compared to grand gestures. And I wondered if you would speak into this more, because I feel like, especially in today's society, there is this glorification of money, and not just of money itself. I might call it even a false idol, but a glorification of who is the wealthiest. And it's not just the top list of Forbes or Fortune magazine of the top billionaires, the top millionaires. It's also the fact that there are wealth reports that track exactly what the affluent do. And sure, there is a value to that. But at the same time, I'd also think that those individuals might feel like a French fry on the beach amongst seagulls. So speak to me for a moment about relationship riches, because if it's all just money, that's a pretty empty world.
It is. It is. It is the superficial and it's the external. And I think it was Oscar Wilde. I'm sure I paraphrased him in some way. That an act of kindness is worth more than the grandest gesture. And why? It's because if you don't know if somebody's rich and something's happening and you drop it and that's the person that picks it up and gives it to you and helps you, it doesn't make any difference if you have money or don't have money, if you're tall or you're short, if you're fat or you're thin. These are all external things. But the act of kindness, the act of creating that connection with another person with the intention of doing nothing except to just help and be kind. And if everything you do is money oriented, uh, because of how marketing and advertising works, we are so drawn to, I've got this thing, it'll help you make $1 billion. I've got this thing, it'll be a great investment. Uh, the fact that people are shown in front of the big house and the fancy car as part of, like, oh, if they have that, I can have this too. If you look at people's vision boards, how many vision boards are all these external things? But who's actually taking the time to craft something that relates to who they are, their integrity? And how does that show up? Because it's easy to show the physical, it's harder to show the things that are intangible, the things that really matter. And relationship riches, at the end of the day, when you've got something going on, who are you picking up the phone to tell? Who are you calling to tell the good news? Who are you calling to share the scary news? Who are those people in your life? And we all have various levels. I think the study that they did, with the 6 degrees of separation, everybody has like 200 friends, of which there's X number that are close, and etc. You know who they are, and then at certain times of year, like holidays, People do more reaching out. I'll reach out, I'll wish somebody a happy new year or a happy birthday. And there's a little bit more of that. But who are the more consistent, the people who are there in your life, that are there for the good and the bad and the thick and the thin? Um, and it's funny because legacy is not just relationship, it's a component of, but again, the longest relationship you have is with yourself. And so you have to invest in yourself. You have to look at, how am I showing up and what am I working on in my life? Is this something that, I don't know who said it. It's like, would your mother be proud if it was splashed across the front page of the New York Times, right? And, sometimes we have an opportunity to get a glimpse into the future. I believe the story with Alfred Nobel from the Nobel Prize. His brother had passed away, and the French newspaper had made a mistake and put his name in there when it was his brother that had died. And they saw everything that was written about him, and they called him the Merchant of Death.
Yeah, Mort.
Because he was the developer of
Dynamite.
And he saw this, and so it really affected him. And he goes, "What am I going to do?" So then he created the Nobel Peace Prize. What's the opposite of somebody who creates war, which dynamite is part of? So he actually turned it into something, and his family was quite shocked that he took all of his money and put it into this long-term foundation, the Nobel Foundation, and they wanted the money. But he had a goal, and it was because he had a glimpse into the future. This is what people really see of me. He had a chance to, what I call, error correct his trajectory and change who he was and how he's showing up. And now he's associated with the Peace Prize as opposed to the Merchant of Death. So, if you fast forward, if you write your life into the future, how do you want to be? Not just a vision board with pretty pictures, but to use that anavim, from dream to anavim, what it is. What is your vision for your life? What is the purpose, the whys, and what people and what methodologies are you going to pull together to live into this life, the life that you're standing for, the things that are important to you. Most people don't spend a lot of time on their life per se. They may think, oh, I have a health coach, I'm going to lose weight, I've got a life coach, I'm going to work on my marriage, which are all good things, but we are not little pieces. We are whole. We are holistic. And it's so important that we look at our life in a holistic way, and our legacy worthy life should be holistic as well.
Yes, yes. I think you're speaking into this idea of aspirational identity, and to be very intentional about that aspirational identity. Lovely, lovely. What do you think holds people back? Is it the stress of the day-to-day? Is it lack of support? What do you think holds people back?
I think it's all of the above, but there's really two things that are on an emotional level, and they're built in. It's evolutionary, and one of them is safety, or the fear of being unsafe. They don't want to do something because they feel like it's unsafe. So safety is a factor. It's a motivator. It's the negative motivator. And then the other is the fear of being unloved, which you could possibly say that maybe you don't feel worthy, so therefore you're unloved. But that feel of being unloved, and that gives us, are you an outcast? Are you lonely? Is somebody not loving me? They're not including me anymore. What's that phrase that people use now, FOMO, fear of missing out, which is a form of being unloved. I think those two major things are what hold people back. And there's derivatives of those in multiple places in our life. When I look, it's like, what is it with me? It's like, oh, I'm too comfortable. I don't want to go into the uncomfortable. That's because it might be unsafe. Or, I don't want to rock the boat. I don't want to say anything to that person because I don't want to mess up my, how they are. But if they're a true friend or a real person, you can be straightforward with them and they'll take it. And if they won't, then what kind of relationship is it anyway? It's superficial. The deep relationships will take you, warts and all. So anyway, I believe those are the two things that really hold people back, and it shows up in multiple ways in their life.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Sometimes if one individual wants to design a legacy and their spouse doesn't understand why, That's a very interesting dynamic. And a part of it could be the spouse doesn't fully, have their head wrapped around it. It could be due to limiting beliefs, what you had referred to before about maybe feeling unsafe, or if they feel that they're undeserving, unworthy. Those are those internal conversations that they need to cut some of those awkward cords.
And with legacy, in addition, you're pushing on the idea of mortality for a lot of people, even though it's not mortality, but because we started off, the problem is that people think legacy is death. That directory of death, which is legacy.com. So if you're doing that, you must be thinking about dying. And some people don't even want to deal with it, have a conversation about it. These are multiple factors having to do with that. And also, the two things that the other currencies, relationships, there's time. So if you're taking time working on legacy stuff, you're taking time away from me. If you're putting money into it, then you're taking that money away from other things that we could be doing. So it's really at that point, it's what I call the sales conversation. So when somebody wants to buy a house and they say, well, you have to have your spouse here so we can do it together, or if it's a big purchase, you have to have the other person, they have to have buy-in. And you have to know what are the psychological triggers of that person so that they will actually step into it and accept it. And that's interesting. I haven't really come across it personally when it comes to legacy, but I believe that that's an important thing to address.
Yes, yes. So, what would you like your holistic legacy to be, and what or who gets to hold you accountable to develop your plan?
Well, I have a little group of people that I work with on these things, but I'm my own best accountability partner. Some people are, even when I was working for a big high tech company and I was doing sales, some people were always looking at the leaderboard to see who's on top, who do I need to beat. I was always going like, I need to beat my own number. So I personally am somebody, I compete with myself. So I check in on myself as far as accountability. But when it comes to, my holistic legacy, I think I'm just going to use the word life's work as the term. I have multiple others, but I believe my life's work is working with people on their legacy. It's their legacy is my life's work. And the things that I do more as a mentor, as a coach, being looking at things, directing, giving advice, sharing, giving guidance, and understanding these areas that I've been delving deep on. Because of my tech background and my research background, I like to go deep on things. I like to look at the different areas and how they affect. I mean, my my mother was a nurse, my dad was a doctor, so I'm looking at the health aspects of legacy, longevity, lifespan. So really, it's the life's work, and this life's work is either a single or collection of significant accomplishments in your individual life, or if you're doing it on behalf of a business, that the lifespan of a business. And it's not just like you're done, you've created this simple book, and the book just being a simple example of how we capture information is really looking at the whole gamut, the holistic is the word that you use, the holistic view of the different areas of your life and pulling it together so you can, number one, feel proud, and that anybody else that matters to you will feel like that you're making a difference in their life too, that there's value there that they can learn from and apply as well, and that you become the role model.
Yes, absolutely. I think by claiming that space and owning it, that is a sign of leadership development, personal development, because people need to know that there's more to this life than just the emptiness, the money, the fads, the trends. There's got to be some type of glue, some Velcro that glues the universe together, that makes the stars more beautiful and makes us want to strive for more than being a merchant of death.
Yeah, poor Alfred Nobel. I mean, that was probably quite a shock to him. But he had a glimpse into the future. Most of us don't think about our life glimpsing into the future. There's multiple movies out there. where something happened and there's two different tracks. I think Sliding Doors was one of those movies where, this is what happened in this direction. There was a TV show where a fellow had three different life paths, and each show showed this is what his life would like if he had gone down one direction or another. And we can look at ourselves. We can write our lives. We can write our narrative and create that world. But if you don't have a strong foundation, who you stand for and what you're doing in this world, then the wind will blow and you're going to be over in this direction. You have to be able to stay the path, understanding that if new information comes in that makes sense, that you change, that you do. You don't want to be like the companies like Blockbuster who missed the idea of
Streaming.
streaming.
Mm-hmm.
There's multiple companies that miss the idea of how the future is changing. But as a human, it's not. You don't quite have the same issues. But you do take a stand and then go forward, and adjust if you see critical things happening that will make a difference. Like if somebody's telling you there's a tsunami coming, then you should actually get out of the way, right?
Yes, yes. Well, I think that we have a time limit on our lives, and if somebody can make some good choices today to live that legacy-worthy life, they'll be happier for it because that tsunami is coming. And not that this is more about living than it is about dying, but um, better to be aware now and to step into our values and guiding principles. So, are there any closing thoughts, or would you like to share a website or a project that you're working on?
Oh, I've got so many projects, but I will share a website, and because there's a lot of interesting pieces there, and I believe a lot of your audience are entrepreneurs, and that website is chieflegacyofficer.com, and I list out 17 things that a chief legacy officer can do, whether you're in a smaller company or if you're an actual founder, an entrepreneur. Um, And I think it's kind of interesting. It's fun. And I look at legacy when it comes to business as you're both an archivist and a futurist. And most people don't think of the chief legacy officer as a futurist, but you are, because you are actually, looking at the past and then helping to define the direction of the future. It's not just the guys that are sitting in the strategy sessions looking at the profit and loss. You have to actually look at the impact of your business, and then how it's going to improve the lives of your clients and customers going forward. They're part of the next generation, not just your family. Your clients are part of the generation of within your business.
Yes. Before I read my closing paragraph, I would just like to take a moment to thank you for bringing the depth to this conversation, the richness. I know we set an intention at the very beginning of how can you or what can you do now to make living a legacy worthy life a priority. And I think you've really filled in some of the puzzle pieces to introduce this idea to the listener and the viewers out there. And just would like to say thank you so much for making the distinctions between an obituary and a legacy, even if it's just a few paragraphs, and realizing that crafting a legacy plan doesn't take 5 minutes. It's a commitment. It takes your emotional intelligence. It takes your heart and your soul and um, who you are on the inside. It's not just you go to ChatGPT and ChatGPT AI produces a legacy plan in 5 minutes or 5 seconds. This is bringing forward what it is you
And it's
stand
full of
for.
flaws. It's
Yeah,
full of
yeah,
flaws.
yes. So, and I also just would like to share that I like what you said about live smart, give smart. Um, where is it that
Leave
you
your
are
mark.
contributing? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, okay. Well, I will read out my closing paragraph unless
Thank
there's
you
something
kindly.
else.
This has been fun. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you on, and I'm so glad that we connected, and I'd love to have you back on again because I think that this expands the conversation around legacy. It broadens it, and I think that's what people need. I think they need to hear different perspectives, and they need to hear how the pieces can be filled in because sometimes their imagination doesn't know. I mean, we think that just because somebody is successful in one area that they're going to have all the answers in other areas, and they don't. They haven't put the time in. So, okay. All right. So, in closing, I'm Angelina Carleton, the the hostess of the Design Your Legacy podcast, as well as the founder to Legacy Planning, a boutique advisory firm based out of Beverly Hills, California, but international in those I consult. I hope to dive deep into subjects that can help a person define, develop, and execute their legacy, and continue to scour the landscape for those who can be great resources to every dimension of your legacy. For many listeners and viewers, there can never be enough education and preparation in the moat around your castle. Whether you find yourself with new wealth or generational wealth, may the content on this channel be an anchor in any storms ahead. We do our best to provide original content for your intellectual and emotional curiosity. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you're tuning in on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please remember to rate and review, share with your family and friends. If you're watching us on YouTube, please remember to like and subscribe and also share with your family and friends. Thank you so much for joining us this week. And thank you, Sherrie Rose, for speaking into your legacy.
Beautiful.